What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Panthers Nation Network. I know we're all hanging on by a thread, so let's just jump right into it. The games against the Seahawks are always close, and to be fair, it was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be.
Absolutely, it was definitely closer than what I thought it was going to be. A different type of game, but one that I kind of thought we would see. I thought we would see more of an open game offensively. I just kind of wish you could clean up a few things. I mean, we had a lot of false start penalties, but
Dude,
we
I
got to
don't
clean
even.
up. And yeah, there's a lot of things we got to clean up, man. That's the main that I took from it. I mean, but good to see that offense did have some type of life.
Yeah, I'll let JB go in a sec. I don't know what type of education they teach at NC State. I thought they were supposed to be like the smart school in North Carolina, like when the engineer. I don't know, like that meant I knew like it. Last few weeks, I'm like, all right, that's just jitters. But last week was just. I know it's Seattle. It's his first time playing in Seattle. I think that's something that people are overlooking a little bit. But I mean, my God.
That wasn't good.
No, I am not going to give you a pass. I think it was an inexcusable play as of yesterday. I've got a lot of thoughts behind it, but really the undisciplined football to me is a real red flag. I know it was his first time being in Seahawks with the Seahawks and playing in Seattle. I can understand the noise being a factor, but my understanding is they practice with noise all week. I'm not gonna give him a pass. I just feel like we had the momentum. We should have won that game for sure. But the actual penalties almost were a football yard long. I mean, a football field long, and that was really the detriment to our entire day.
I think we'll start off with the glaring obvious. It's these first quarters. Like, I mean, the 10. I don't know what's on the 10 sheet, but it seems that it only is about 7 plays because we can get to the red zone just fine. We can get out there, and of course, I think there was the one false start off that first drive that did set them back, and it seemed like every single time. That's what made the false start so just jarring. Is every single time they had the momentum or they needed to make a short yardage play, they needed to be 3rd and 5, not 3rd and 10. That's where the false starts came up.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where when you come out of false starts and things like that are so simple. I don't know if is that coaching or is that just on the players? Like, which one are we putting that on? I would say it's got to be a mix of both. But
If it were spread out amongst the line a little bit more, I would be more inclined to say the coaching. But we also know Campen is one of the more like sought after offensive line coaches out there. If it were more spread around, I think there was one or two that wasn't icky. I think this is just we've seen it, and I don't want to harp on the guy. Like I'm not saying sophomore slump. I'm not saying any of that because I don't think that exists in a lineman. But I don't know what it is. Like it's from because this has been consistent preseason, like mini camp. I mean, he was doing it in training camp. Like he was the only one getting false starts in training camp. So it's something that's just not clicking for him, and I don't know what it is.
Out of the 13 penalties, 8 of them came from false starts. That last drive in the fourth quarter, where we had 2 back to back and no, it was like 3 back to back in the same series. To my point, to me, I think there's a real focus issue with Icky right now. Whatever it is, whether it's him thinking too much, whether it's him not being focused in on the details, whether it's too much going on from an audible perspective, whatever it is, it's something with that focus and it's not clicking. And it's actually starting to rub off on other linemen because it looks like we're trying to overcompensate for what Icky can't do. Not only is he getting blown off the ball, but he's putting us in positions to where, to your point, Jack, we're not getting that third and short that we need. And when we are in those situations, we shoot ourselves in the Achilles every time.
And maybe it's something along the lines of like when you are like it's one thing to be drafted that high up as an offensive lineman, for a veteran quarterback or anything like that. Maybe there's a little bit more in it about being that anchor, your blindside blocker for now your franchise quarterback. That comes with a lot more added pressure than blocking on that side for Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield. That's one thing. But now when you have a guy who's undersized, a guy who is your entire franchise going forward or is supposed to be, maybe some more pressure comes from that, and that causes some of him getting in his own head, and that might have been solved with Andy going in there. But then you go to Seattle, and that just
yeah, I mean that's a real possibility. At this point, we haven't seen him play well with Bryce under center. Again, and even yesterday, I don't know, man. That performance yesterday. This isn't the first time this team went to Seattle last year and played way more efficient football than we
oh,
saw.
that's right. It was in Seattle last year, wasn't it?
It was like
So you can't even get Icky the pass of not being there.
I thought maybe
before.
you were talking about Zavala.
No, I was thinking. I thought it was in Bank of America. To be completely honest.
No. We went on the road to Seattle and got that win last year, and to not see this group, I don't know, like bounce back or seem as an efficient football team was kind of a little troubling, bro. I mean, like that offensive line. If you look at the offensive line grades, I saw the PFF grades. I mean, Zavala had a 0 for pass blocking yesterday. That's how bad that was yesterday. Icky had like a 24. I think he had like maybe like a 60 in rushing. But like it wasn't a great day for that offensive line group, and you saw it. The grades and the film look exactly the same.
Yeah, our offensive line. We could talk about this until we're blue in the face. We've needed to draft much better for our offensive line, or even recruit much better for our offensive line for over the last 10 or so years. This is no secret. I don't know why, as an organization, we don't deem that position as worthy enough to draft high, to go out and pay these guys and get these guys that we need to come in and actually play the game and the ball that we need to play. I mean, to be 100% candid, we got to lay this at Scott Fitterer's feet. We have no talent on that front line. Zero. I'm going top to bottom. Even if Christensen and Corbett were in there, I still don't see us being able to be a top tier sort of line to protect that Bryce Young in his rookie season.
So I disagree with that, though, because, I mean, before the season started, that was like, all right, that's the one position we're not worried about. We knew Bozeman was going to be kind of rusty coming off, and we didn't know how long it was going to be until Corbett got into the full swing of things. And I really do think that plays a much larger role than we want to give to him. And I know you don't want to scapegoat one guy or put all it's just because he's not in. But, I mean, especially at that left guard position, because that was the whole thing. Having Zavala, I think he played well when he was playing on the right side. I thought he was doing well. And then once Christensen went down and they had to move him over, I think that's where we thought that chemistry that was going to exist just didn't exist. And I don't know if they, we knew that was where he could play, but I thought he did well in the left spot. But Corbett, I think, just really provided a lot more than we like to say. Corbett and Bozeman. I mean, for all of their, issues of what Fitterer did last year and the last few years, I think those were two signings that were not mistakes. And we're not just bargain bin guys. Now, that's not to say that, you putting a lot of trust into Christensen, who was already injury prone and, wasn't even your first choice at that spot. Moten, we know, is solid, and he's, I think, tried to brush away all the he's the least, needed lineman there. He's performing the most consistently out of all of them. So I don't think it's honestly the fact that there's no talent. I think the health is a big issue. And then I think it's almost more of a lack of chemistry because they haven't had that offseason to get together. You'd think last year would have been a big piece of it and Icky would have been fine, but I think we're just also disregarding how young Icky and Brady Christensen are. You want your top picks to be able to assimilate as quickly as possible. That doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Yeah, no, and they were definitely watching the guy, I think, go through that sophomore stuff, but they were still watching the guy that's learn to be an elite pass blocker. We all knew that coming out with, we knew he great at guard. We knew he was more of a bona fide run blocker than he was a pass blocker. So, again, when you have an offense that's throwing the ball 58 times yesterday, and a lot of it due because you were so far behind the sticks because of these mental errors with these false starts, you get out of what makes them a good group, and their best ability as a group is as a run blocking group.
Here's my question to the both of you, though. I'll give you what you're saying. Let me ask you a question. Name another team that you can think of whose line year over year is lackluster
now
and has made it far. No, I'm just going to throw it out there. Patriots been through a rebuild. I don't see much to chagrin about their line. We could talk about the Bengals. They were the Bungles for how long, but it seems like they've been consistent in their line play over time. The Chiefs, who considerably rotate players in and out, don't seem to have an issue with it. So I'm asking, what is it about our organization that we haven't been able to get it right? Even in the year of 2015, our line was not even one of the top-ranked lines. So this is an issue from an organizational perspective, is what I'm saying. We've never been able to say our line is going to carry us through, ever.
Now, I agree with that point wholeheartedly because for whatever reason, I mean, yeah, you go back I'd go past that. I mean, even, the Cardiac Cats were still rolling with guys that you didn't know who they were. It was, 2003 was probably the last time you had an all-pro offensive line with the likes of Garcia and Donnelly and guys of that regard. Up until that, after that point, and that's, that was instilled by that John Foxian kind of, blue-collar offense, that Cardiac Cats. But you're right. I mean, after that point, once, Jordan Gross and Ryan Clear were the last guards of, the old offensive line. But even then, they were very few and far between. I mean, then you get into, Jeff Otai and some of your other guys that, you try to get thinking it would be great. I mean, they definitely have not prioritized the line for a long time in the Rivera era, towards the end of the Fox era, and then throughout the entirety of, the Tepper era. Same with defensive backs. And when we did, the all-team draft, we talked about how, we have overflowing with with edge rushers and defensive tackles and
Linebackers.
like we have no shortage of them. We can pick all until the cows come home. But when it comes to linemen, you're drafting tight ends because you don't have enough actual solid linemen to establish a all-time great list of your offensive line. So no, I agree with you, and the same goes for defensive backs. It's why for the last probably close to a decade, we as Panthers fans have been clamoring for, hey, help us out on the offensive line, help us on the defensive backs, but then I also think that creates that vacuum. Like I'll call it the Dante Jackson effect, where finally, listen, just stop it. You're like, finally, thank God we've drafted this guy. So that means he's gonna be good. He's gonna ball out because we finally prioritized this position. So if we've waited so long to prioritize the position, they must be must be worth it.
Right.
Clearly, that's not the case.
No.
I mean, when you saw him get burned by who was it?
Bobo.
That should be on his tombstone. That's it.
I'm gonna keep it hot though. I like Jay Bobo, bro. Because I paid attention to UCLA last year. He played alongside DCR. He was DCR's number one receiver. Now, again, should that have happened to Dante Jackson? Nah.
Like, I don't even care if you thought
Did I get no wait. Did I go in the text chat yesterday?
You immediately texted. I was watching back, like I missed it in real time, but then I was watching the full replay. I record because you record on YouTube TV, which is nice.
Right.
That's the one nice thing. But so I was watching the full replay, and I was thinking in my head, like I saw it happen, and I'm like, yeah, he definitely texted at that exact moment. And I don't care if you think there's OPI or whatever, you don't let that happen to you. Like, I do not understand how that, and then it happened to, or Jeremy Chin getting burned by Kenneth Walker. That one was brutal too. That one was really gross.
Yeah, I think Jeremy Chin, since we're talking about the defense, I think Jeremy Chin is somewhat confused of what his role is.
I would be.
He's not being consistently used in a situation where he's going to be successful. I mean, he's making plays for us. Don't get me wrong, but I think for him, you have to give him the identity of what you want him to be. And he doesn't have that right now. He's like a Roman nomad, right? He's moving around the field. He's playing the nickel sometimes. Sometimes he's not. Sometimes he's playing at the corner. He's just all over the place. And for him, I think he needs to find a rhythm. He played pretty well yesterday, but to your point, Kenneth Walker gave him work. But we're going to talk about that backup running back. What is it, Charbonnet?
Yeah.
He gave our whole defense work late in the second half.
I'm telling you, you think about the type of running backs that kind of did us in the last few weeks. Tyler Algier, he was a BYU guy, another one of those West Coast guys. Charbonnet, again, a UCLA guy, another one of those West Coast guys. And you start to see, bro, like anybody can run on us at any point in time. When teams decide they really want to be, it's really time to go win the game against Carolina, you just run the ball.
Cam Akers will have a career resurgent next week. He will. Cam Akers will be. People will wonder why the Rams let him go when he comes to Minnesota in the purple and gold, and he's going to run all over our turf. I mean, it happens. I can't count on my fingers the amount of times it happened, most notably and most, like recently, obviously Tyler Algier, he was putting up numbers more than Bijan Robinson in that game. Tony Jones, we got him a paycheck. We got him a paycheck and a contract. How about how he did in that game?
Bro, you feel me? It's like, that's probably been the most disappointing thing about this defense so far, is that I don't see us we don't look physical at all in the run game. Like I see us getting pushed around. I see us. I mean, we're flying off of guys. Nobody has any type of sense of physicality when they come up and make tackles. Like, I don't know what it is. We don't seem to have that type of oomph that we've known this defense to have in years past.
I'll tell you what it is. It's that we had Fat Rule tell us we needed to get run stopping linebackers, but then sign and pick up these weird two-way guys. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Frankie. I love Camus. I love, these guys that we've gotten on this team, and they do what they do well. They do well. They're not run-stopping linebackers. I mean, it's gotten to the point where Justin Houston is probably our best run-stopping linebacker, and thank God for Justin Houston and Deion Jones. Right. They looked like the most consistent pieces of our linebacking core last week. I mean, Frankie.
And I know. No, I was gonna say I know we're tired of talking about it, but we haven't been able to plug that hole since Luke Kuechly, and I think for some reason we're still holding on to. We're gonna find that one. There is no other one like him. Shaq Thompson, I think we're really realizing how much we miss him being in there as a general. I think that we're missing that part as well. I think the young guys are looking for that. Luvu's going to feel it. But everybody, to your point earlier, Jack, the injury bug is our biggest opponent as well, besides us shooting ourselves in the foot. You look at the defensive side of the ball. Mingo's in concussion protocol now. You've got Burns. I don't know if y'all noticed. was limping.
Yeah.
He's been limping for he has not been healthy, and I know he wants to play to facilitate, and he's doing it well to say, look, he's at least he's good for at least one or two big plays.
Yeah.
But he's not 100%, and I really want them to pay him so that he can then honestly take a day off, take a week off, hold him back after you've paid him.
Yeah, but these are the issues that I think we're going to see persist. Also, with that, Dante Jackson, our secondary did pretty well yesterday. I'm not going to say they did the best. They did pretty well yesterday. I was really happy with Hill, the way he played.
Yeah.
Played deep on those balls. He really saved us a lot. What's my man Franklin? He did some good. He did good work yesterday.
That was one of the cleanest PBUs I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I was very shocked to see how well he played yesterday. So was very, very happy overall with the defensive play. But of course, you already knew the text message said it all. As soon as it happened, it happens every game. I can't wait to see what Justin Jefferson does to Dante Jackson next week, because it's going to be ugly. And then we're not even going to talk about Miami yet, because I'm not even ready to see them hang 100 on us.
Yeah.
So these are the upcoming games that we have to look forward to. And this defense, even though we don't do them any favors by keeping them on the field way too long. I mean, by the time we get to the third and fourth quarter, these guys are gassed.
Yeah, but I can't even get the defense that excuse yesterday. I mean, besides the injuries are a big part of what happened yesterday. But you did have an offense that was able to put up points. You had opportunities to, if you are a good defensive group, you'll get a stop, right? You'll get stops in certain spots. Just didn't do it. A lot of the passing plays that you saw from Seattle yesterday, like I said, our secondary did play well. There was no pressure on Geno Smith a lot of times in that second half.
There wasn't and that's right there in the second half. I don't understand what changes. Like the first half, we were all over Geno Smith, causing you're forcing turnovers. You got him on the ground. And I'll tell you who's really been just capitalizing on all the anarchy is Yetur Gross-Matos. Again, he was all over the field, and I'm like, what is happening right now? I don't know if it's just a lack of needing to care about it. So it's like, oh hey, now he's doing well. Yeah. But then I don't understand. And from Avera, what changes if they're getting out schemed? But it doesn't seem like they're doing that much differently from a blocking standpoint. They weren't double teaming anybody. They weren't switching up their formations.
Yeah, but if you look at the last three games, the shift from the first half to the second half, every team comes out and they pound it down our throats. So to the point of the running, right, the running defense, right, that's the weakness. So they know it. So they start the second half pounding it down our throats. So by the time we're going 3 and out, the defense is on the field 90% of the time. So by the time you get to those minutes that we really need them to show up and show out like they did in the first half, they've been beat up. We haven't figured out the run defense, which I don't know what Avero's going to do about that. I don't know how he's going to scheme against that, because teams now know the formula. It's not going to get easier. It's only going to get worse. And we've got some real running teams coming up on our radar.
That's what we said last week. They've got. We gave it away last week. If they just they boost up the run, make you come down, and then bite you in the ass, because they know that then they can take a shot deep. And then on the other side of the ball, defense, because we said that on offense, right? On offense, you can scheme easily on defense. They're not going to throw anything deep, so you can just send the house. That's all that's going to happen. And same thing on defense. They know that we're going to send the blitz in the first half, and they kept baiting us, just like I said. Let them get a couple sacks in the first half, because then when that second half comes around, they're not going to be able to stop the run, and someone's going to be injured, or someone's not going to be able to take care of that offense and your wide receivers. I mean, it happens all the time. And so I think that's also the more aggravating part about the defense, especially outside of some glaring, discrepancies, is what we were worried about this defense coming into the year was the depth. We were worried the depth wasn't going to be able to perform. Now we're seeing the depth can play, but they're having to play in starting capacities, which
right. Like if I had like for example Troy Hill, right? If I have J.C. Horn and I don't have to play Troy Hill this much,
it's perfect.
It's perfect. Because I think he's played really well. He's very much a savvy veteran. But then having to go to guys like a Sam Franklin who are having to play a lot of minutes now, you just don't have the horses for it, bro. I mean, we knew we didn't have the depth, but this really speaks to, again, our good buddy Scott. We've not hit on anything in the draft past the first 2 rounds,
right?
Well, first 2 or 3 maybe, depending on the year, and the lack of. Cutting all of these guys like a Davion Nixon, cutting off so many of these guys in previous drafts, man, and not having anything left. Like you have nothing left. You have no contributions from the guys you drafted, and that's very telling right now for a GM that everybody has been willing to keep and willing to give a chance to.
Yeah, I had a conversation with my best friend today, and him and I go through our Monday quarterback, if you will. And the first thing out of his mouth was, I drank the Kool-Aid too early when it came to Scott Fitterer, right? I think we all gave him credit of the moves he made for the cap purposes, right? Getting us out underneath that cap hell, trying to right size the books, try to give us money to be able to go out and get some of these names, some of these veterans, bringing in some people that to come help out. But overall, to your point, Shontis, I'm in total agreement with you. What has he done? There have been no big splashes other than what he did with DJ Moore and Bryce Young, and we're seeing how that's panning out. Because right now, Chicago's going to have the number 1 and the number 2 pick next year, right? Because of us, right? So that's what we're sitting. Think about that as we start going through the season. And I literally was very candid with him today. I said, I could actually see us going into the bye week with not a win.
Quite easily. Mm-hmm. Quite easily.
Like seriously going into the half of the year, over half the year, with 0 wins. So does that lay at the feet of a Frank Reich, which we're all getting used to this new coaching staff? Or does that truly lay at the feet of the front office of a Scott Fitterer and the scouting team around him, and nobody really doing the work to bring in the talent that we need to come and back up these, our injury-prone situations that we're having right now? Luckily, with JC going down, we're kind of prepared for that. We kind of probably thought in the back of our minds, JC's not going to play a full season. So we brought in help for that reason. We have not done that on the offensive side of the ball. With Christensen being out already, Corbett being out at the beginning and Christensen being out, now we're kind of trying to mend these with small patches, and we're not getting anywhere fast. We go out and we sign a Tariq Cohen. We go out and we sign another receiver. We go out and we sign another returner. Why haven't we gone out and signed another lineman? Why have we not gone out to, these are the questions that Scott needs to answer.
Which I'm like, huge, and it's happened the last 2 weeks. Y'all mentioned Tariq Cohen, and I completely forgot that he's a part of this roster. Yeah. Isaiah Smith-Marset, or Shamir Smith-Marset, forgot that he was on the roster.
Oh, no, he's out there. He's just not doing anything.
Exactly.
He's got to stop fielding these punts. I'm getting tired of it.
We traded away real draft capital for that man.
We really did.
I need people to understand. We traded away real draft picks for him. So, for him not to be able to, he can't play receiver because I haven't seen him out there except for on a Hail Mary situation. He can't field punts. I don't know what exactly he's supposed to be here to do. I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong when we traded for him and they started showing me college highlights. That's y'all flip.
That's an issue. That's a big issue. And we pick up that guy from Indianapolis, the wide receiver, and there's no reason for that. And he was actually getting minutes in Indianapolis, and that was another maybe Frank Reichism. But I think the one thing that has kind of been kind of jarring, because you talk about Scott Fitterer and kind of drinking the Kool-Aid too quickly, and that's honestly because again we were so desperate for a competent GM after getting just kind of sidelined with the retiree. Again, for no reason whatsoever. There was no reason for him to come back into the building, but again, we got him. And I feel like this is just all of us, you hear, from and I'm not going to put it in that level this quickly, but you hear, from Lions fans or from Commanders fans, you hear from Bears fans about how upset they are with ownership, how tired they are of their ownership. As Panther fans, we've only ever known one owner. We've never had to go through, okay, this is what the team was under this owner. This is what the team was under this owner, and been able to compare it. We had nothing to compare it to. And then you come in with this businessman who, what's a key thing for, a business that's just trying to stay afloat is getting them so desperate for this thing and then bringing them something that looks like it's going to be it, and then it's not. So then you just keep the cycle going. And I feel like this is happening constantly. I'm like, I wonder what Tepper's legacy is going to be like, 10 years down the road. He fires Ron Rivera. And what was I think 15 and 76 or something like that in the span of the time.
17 and 40.
I knew that number was too high. Thank you. 17 and 40 in the time frame since he's been fired. I'm not saying it was not wrong to fire him. We were recording.
We just all thought that every time we went through a hiring cycle with David Tepper, we thought one thing, we got something totally different.
Yeah.
I didn't think Matt Rule when we first fired Ron Rivera. I definitely didn't think Frank Reich when we moved on from Matt Rule. We've always gone on the opposite direction. We want an offensive minded coach. Well, I think all of us thought, young offensive mind is where you should probably go. Right? We didn't think, OG that just got fired like I didn't think that was probably the way to go. And you start looking at the new young offensive minds, they're having success early on with their squads. Their squads look better. They're playing with a lot more pop, and they have at least a win or 2 wins by now. The retread guys like Sean Payton, Frank Reich, 0-3.
I mean, the most obvious
Yep.
example of it was that Dolphins Broncos game. You got, Mike McDaniels, who nobody was looking at, not even his own team that he was, on that staff. And obviously, it was a year out of our cycle, but like that's where it's so upsetting. Where like this Mike McDaniel guy is a diamond in the rough, and now he's putting up 70 points in a football game, just calling plays willy nilly to the point where Robbie Chosen Anderson, whatever his name is actually contributing to that offense and putting up points. And we're going, like you said, these blue cow guys that aren't up to snuff, or we're going at, the guys we go after that you never heard of. Because we always keep saying that too when it comes to player standpoint too. Why are these players that, are just diamonds in the rough? Why do we never hit on these guys?
Man, I'm watching.
You ready for my synopsis of this? 4 years ago, we had the guy in the building and we let him walk out. I'm going to say it again. 4 years ago, we had the guy in the building and we let him walk out the building. And if you look at the offense he's coordinating now, they're balling. I know it didn't look like it on Sunday. They're balling. They're balling, though. They're balling. Like Sam Howell looks good in that offense. The plays that they're calling, the schemes that they're calling, everything that they're using, because he understands the offense and what they have at play. I just want to put this thought in your mind. I had this conversation along with my Monday quarterback with my boy. Do you think the way Tepper's conducting business in the Carolinas, from the football team to the soccer teams, do you think he's making a case? Because people are not going to be in the door. He's already burned bridges with the powers that be to get the stadium done that we need to in order to get a Super Bowl in the Carolinas. Do you think he's making a play or to size it up to be able to move the team?
I
thought about that last night, and I've been thinking about it more over today. And he can make a legitimate argument that, look, nobody's coming to the games. I'm losing money, X, Y, and Z. Not thinking about the product he's putting on the field, right? Just simply from a business standpoint, to your point, Jack, right? He's showing a loss in the red since he took over this team. So for him, he can make a case to move the team. What are you guys' thoughts about that?
I've always thought that was a possibility with David Tepper. I as soon as you brought an outside guy in, I got it. One, he's a business guy. So as soon as I hear business guy, I'm thinking, this dude's shiesty, bro. He'll do something. If it makes money and if it makes money, it makes sense for him. And if he can get this team moved, then yeah, that absolutely bringing in the soccer team, which again I think is good for the city. But I could definitely see him looking at other destinations out here. There's other destination cities that you can take all of this to, and it still works just fine. He'll still make a lot of money. But yeah, I've always had that in the back of my mind. I just don't know how he would. I mean, like you said, I'm thinking of
expansion. Though. I'm thinking of expansion overseas. Like once we actually pull the trigger on the overseas teams, he ponying up the Panthers to be one of those franchises to go.
That's a possibility. I think us in Jacksonville. I mean, Jacksonville for sure.
Yep.
They're like the team I know. I think we kind of all feel that's going. But us being in that mix, bro, is not too far out of the question.
I think that.
What about you?
I think definitely, like, in terms of relocation in the United States, I don't think would happen. And I think it's solely because of the soccer team. I think if the soccer team, like, that did show commitment to the city, that was, like, an idea that was always there but never had any traction until he got here. And now they're under the same umbrella. So now if you move the Panthers, you have to move the soccer team, too. The soccer team's not going to stay because it's under the same umbrella in terms of how he owns it, what he's going to do with it. Like, I don't think he would go hand in and foot in to do so. They're not going to let that stadium just be for a soccer team. So I think that would, but that being said, if there's ever a place that would, is always looking for soccer teams of any standpoint, you could move those players, move those assets to Europe in regard to something like that. But like I said, outside of, that kind of stuff, I don't know. I feel like had he just come in, like, done all this stuff, not worried about like the looks of it, the off the field, product, the different fan experiences, trying to update the team a bit more, the Hall of Honor, stuff like that. I think that made me a bit more confident that he wasn't going to do something like that. Now that could be for worse because that means he's actually committed to the team and we're not going to get rid of him anytime soon. But I think that he actually is, I think that you don't see very many times where, whether it was for show or not, you don't see very many times where the owner, other than Jerry Jones, is in, the fan tailgates that first game of the year. Like that, when he first did that, I was like, okay, regardless of what he does as a football mind, I feel like you can really tell that he does want to be a part of this community. Being obviously a business guy from Pittsburgh, I was always very wary of him. But I do think that if there's one thing that he does seem to do well, or he does prioritize, it is the community aspect. Like the Rock Hill stuff, I think that he just didn't handle. He handled like a big city kind of business thing, and I don't think he understood what Rock Hill was and what kind of environment he was getting into when he
But
tried.
that's why he had, but that's why he had Marty Herney in the. That's why he had Marty Herney in the beginning, right? Marty Herney. That's why you talked about Marty Herney being, why did we bring him back in the building? I'm a soul and I'm a sole believer in the fact that he had Marty Herney come in strictly to help him bridge those gaps with the businesses to try to see the next steps of bringing in the soccer team, what it looks like building a new facility, all of those things, right? I think that Marty Herney had those ties and was able to help him facilitate that bridge, right? But it didn't go well at the end of the day. He went and he tried to get the cities to buy in, give him tax breaks, give him money, and it didn't work. So now it's almost like there's a temper tantrum, and in doing so, the fans are suffering because the product on the field, bar none, is much worse than what it was last year.
If Marty Herney knows how to tie his own shoes at this point, I'll be shocked. I swear to God.
From a business standpoint, Dad,
I don't think so either.
You can't.
I think the only reason that he brought Marty Herney in is because when talking to Richardson, saying, I need to clear house. I'm not sure how to go about doing so. Who do I need to bring in? What do I need to do? Should I keep this? Richardson was like, keep him around. I mean, Richardson was known to be friends with Marty Herney. That was a thing that's why he came back for that interim position. I don't think Herney had anything to do with in terms of like FC or anything outside of the Panthers. I think all he was there to do was to sign blindly for Tepper too. I'm not saying that Tepper did smart things. I'm saying Tepper did stupid things in that regard. I don't think Herney had anything to do with it. But regardless, I think that the Panthers the product is dwindling, I'd say, in terms of he's put these flashy changes in the stadium, putting in the new boxes, putting in, there's still some discrepancies, like, some of those TVs aren't on, some of the food's gone down. But then like the FC, as up and down as they are, they make money. And they make more money than they cost. Oh, yeah. So he's not in the red in terms of the FC. But I don't see him pulling away from the team, honestly. Like, obviously I wasn't alive. And Shontis wasn't either, but you might remember at least, what the environment was in Charlotte when, the Hornets got pulled out, and I don't think it's something similar.
Oh, it was bad.
Yeah.
It was really bad.
And it was bad for different reasons and beforehand, and because it was kind of like an out of a nowhere situation. And that was a really more kind of selfishly motivated thing. I don't think Tepper kind of aligns in that direction because, of where he came from, honestly, coming from that Pittsburgh background, that Steelers background, I think does lead a lot into that kind of loyalty. That doesn't mean he's a smart football mind, and I think that's been his biggest issue, is that Fitterer also kind of operates like a businessman. I think that's been our biggest thing, is a lot of us have thought, oh, he's both a businessman and he's got a football mind. The more of these moves he makes, I'm like, all right, these are better business decisions than they are football decisions. We're not keying in on, like you said, these guys that everyone else is getting that are diamonds in the rough, no one knows about, that we're not hitting on. I'm starting to realize that I think Fitterer is more of just this business guy than he's a football mind.
And I think another thing too about Scott is that, look, we talk about, we talk down about Marty Herney a lot, and rightfully so for some of the things. But I look at a lot of draft picks Marty Herney has made. Bro, his guys stick. They can stick in this league. Yeah. They stick around the team. The guys Scott has picked, these guys are not getting picked up by anybody. Mm-mm. They're not playing right.
They're practice squad everywhere else.
They're practice squad everywhere else. Everywhere else they go, they're practice squad. So, I mean, again, you got to ask yourself, like, I think what made Scott, a fan favorite pretty quickly was that he was active. I think that's the one thing we always knew we didn't have in Carolina. Oh, sure. We didn't have an active GM. But it's a difference between having motion and making progress. See, he's just a guy that just has motion. He'll just do things just for the sake of doing things, and we think, oh, this is good. So we trade away this 5th round pick in 2 years from now. Oh, so this must be a good move. It does nothing. We end up needing that 5th round pick later, and we end up having to make another trade to go get it back. At least with progress with Marty Herney, yeah, okay, he isn't the greatest maybe rounds 4 through 7, but he'll at least draft a Curtis Samuel. He'll at least draft a DJ Moore. He'll at least draft a Christian McCaffrey. He'll at least put some type of weaponry around it actually makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Where you look at even Gettleman made a whole lot of moves that didn't make sense. Like the guys that have played and stuck around for the Carolina Panthers, even on this squad right here, Brian
So it
Burns
makes
is a
you
Marty
wonder.
Hurney pick.
Yeah.
Dante Jackson's a Marty Hurney pick. All of these guys are Hurney guys. I'm like, bro, Scott Fitterer just isn't a NFL caliber GM, bro. He just not cut out for the job.
Well, I think that's part of it. And I think too, if you look at who Marty Herney had around him as far as scouting, right? We had one of the top scouting teams in the business. You look at, I'll say it again. You look at Panthers North. Brian Bean should have never left our building. I mean, he was our homegrown person. He was in our scouting room. So I think that's another part of it. To who does Scott have around him in those positions to be giving him good feedback on who we're trying to draft? Are we just looking at the glamour and glitz of a name, right? Not really doing the digestive part of how does this player really fit into our organization? How does this player really fit the scheme that we want to run long term? And who is this player long term wise as far as durability, his knowledge of the game, and how he fits, culturally with us? So there's a lot of, I'm not going to say blame, there's a lot of fingers that we could point, but it does start at that front office because they sign the checks and they're the ones who are going out and saying, hey, this guy's going to make a difference for our team. And what we've come to find is some of them are coming to fruition, like your tour. I think we were all down on your tour last year, and it seems like he's coming around to come into his own this year. Didn't know about a Frankie Louvu. Lord knows, thank God we got him wherever he came from. I do like his play and his angst about the game, his oomph about the game. Brian Burns was a no-brainer. I mean, he came from a top-tier school. He was a baller there. He was in our purview, and we needed him in that position slot. The same with J.C. Horn. His pedigree alone speaks for itself. McCaffrey, the same. We have not found a diamond in the rough in quite some time, and it's going to come down to Tepper's going to have to make a decision. He's going to have to make a decision this year on Scott Fitterer.
So, if any bright spots, if I will say, I think that two players at least did show. We saw why we got Andy Dalton. Mm-hmm. That was seen. DJ Chark finally looked like the guy that we were wanting him to be. We needed a little bit more, but at least showed the flashes if he can be that guy. Mm-hmm. Making two big. He's that big play guy like they talked about. And same with Adam Thielen. They say what you want about his being on the roster. He's proving why. I mean, he's got a couple great catches under his belt. That touchdown will be too little, too late. And then I would say, when blocking is in tip-top shape, Miles Sanders at least looks like he can get some yards, but only when the blocks are all completely right.
Yeah, I mean, Thielen's been the best signing so far. I'd probably say.
Yeah,
he's been the most consistent, even with Bryce, and definitely with Andy Dalton. Like, he's been the one guy that we could rely on, which we all thought he would be coming into the year. Chark, he had a nice day, right?
That's fine. We don't need.
That's fine.
As long as it doesn't stop the recording. Yeah. Okay. I guess I didn't think about that respect. So I guess make sure it deletes off of it. It shouldn't be, but it doesn't show up. It didn't show up last time, did it?
No, I don't think it did.
All right.
But yeah, okay. So okay.
It's still recording. Keep going.
Facts. But DJ Chark, I mean, even against Devin Witherspoon, you talk about like Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant were both out. So I think we do have to think about like, hey, look. This was
trying to think about that. Yeah.
A very porous secondary. Like, that was my whole thing going into this game. Like, okay, this needs to be the game where you have a big day, and you did. So the script went as planned. You just didn't, score enough.
No. And now, like JB, you're talking about it in terms of where we're gonna kind of need to find these wins. I mean, this game right here, because the Vikings have shown they can lose to less than average teams, and so like you have to show it here. And you have to go, okay, we can actually get a win here against the Vikings because this is one of your few spots going forward that you're going to be able to get a win.
This is a make or break. This game is more pivotal than we wanted it to be. Shontis, we talked about at the beginning of the year, we can't go 0-3 out of the first 3 games or 0-4 out of the first 4. We're teetering on going 0-4. I'm glad that the game is at home. I'm glad that Thielen's going to probably be up and pumped for this game to really show out for sure. I'm hoping we start Andy Dalton. I want Bryce to sit one more week. I think Bryce learned a lot watching Andy Dalton on Sunday. You can see him on the sidelines, digesting it, having conversations. So I think that that's going to benefit him much more. I want to harp back on Miles Sanders. The one thing that is surprising me about Miles Sanders is he doesn't show a burst of speed to me. He's much more of a methodical runner. I like Chuba Hubbard in that position. Chuba comes out the blocks, busting seams. Every time he got in the game, whether it was tough yardage, whether it was easy yardage, I think Chuba was averaging 3 to 4 yards a carry by himself, right? And so for me, if I'm Frank Reich and I'm looking at this, and I know you signed Miles and that's Deuce's guy and all of that, you got to put Chuba much more active in this offense. And for some odd reason, you only did the Chenault thing once, and it worked a bit. I don't know why we didn't go back to repeat it. At least go to the other side, or even put Chenault in as a receiver to get some of these cross the middle routes to help Thielen out, so that it's not always concentrated on Thielen coming out. And we need to talk about your boy Marshall before we get off this call tonight, because where is he? Oh, somebody talk to me. Where is he?
I'm willing to, we said this a while ago. It's not like me and this guy were ever really the biggest fans of Terrace Marshall to start with. Now, I think he can play. I don't know what's happened, or like this is bad though. Like, he just does not look playable out there.
No.
But truthfully and honestly, neither does Mingo either. Like Mingo right now, he's a rookie, so he's
a rookie though, Shontis. I mean, he's a rookie.
I think he was looking fine until the concussion. I mean,
yeah, me too.
I don't think he was playing he's not at least not this year. He's not gonna be DK Mac.
For this to be the guy Smitty put his arm around, bro, I'm looking at Smitty again, like, bro, what's going on, man?
Because I mean, you look at the receivers that would have been left at that point. I don't think there was anybody.
Well, Tank Dell went right after Jonathan Mingo. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like we got high on Mingo late, but I looked at Tank Dell very early last year. I'm like, bro, that's a guy you need to go get if he's gonna sit there that long. And again, I don't want to jump on Mingo, bro, but it's like you look at what you need, and is Mingo what you need at that position?
And it's also worse though to see like you had C.J. Stroud and Tank, and you had the ability for both, and you went for Bryce Young and Mingo instead, and then you see both of them balling out together.
Right. It looks bad from like because people are pushing the narratives now.
Yeah, but I mean, look at when like that was one of our biggest things, especially out of that draft. That second, that second, Fitterer year, second rule year was, okay, hold on. Like you said the whole time, we offensive line. And we didn't need a receiver at that point in time. It made no sense when we drafted him. It made zero to no sense. You still had DJ. You still had Curtis Samuel to be, if I'm not mistaken. I think he had not hit the bricks yet.
No.
You talking about Mingo?
You drafted Terrace?
Yeah. It was the same year as Christensen.
We gave Curtis the boot. We didn't re-sign Curtis.
We did. That's right.
He was in a contract year. We had grabbed Robbie Anderson to that point.
Yep.
But again, like you said, I mean, we knew that it was going to be DJ and Robbie being the 1 and the 2. Terrace would have to be the 3. But I mean, again, it should be no surprise. Terrace struggled with the last coaching staff as far as getting playing time too. Like he
struggled at LSU getting playing time.
Exactly. Right. But here's the part with Terrace, right? If you're gonna trade away DJ and you want to make Terrace that guy, what did you see in him that made you think he was that guy? Because honestly, you could have packaged him up and probably got a late third.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is that, this could be like that level of like, your John Robinson in Tennessee where, the deal to get rid of A.J. Brown for what they thought was going to happen ended up being the nail in the coffin. And we kept talking about it. If you really thought that this is what you wanted to do and you wanted to make this jump for Bryce and you send away your top receiver to do so instead of Brian Burns, who now you're still on the seesaw about paying, it's like, okay, this could be like, if like what you said happens and if the Bears get the 1 and the 2, I mean, that's got to be it for Fitterer, right? Like that's.
Oh, he's done.
Oh yeah, it's a wrap.
There's a good chance, and depending on how bad this looks, I mean, we saw Nathaniel Hackett get this treatment in Denver last year. There's a good chance that if this thing doesn't look like something that's moving in the right direction, that you do end up canning Frank Reich at the end of the year. Now, I'm not hoping for that. I'm hoping we can get it. We can get this thing turned around, and we can get this thing. We can right the shipping and rectify some things. But I want this to look confident at some point. I want this to look right. But right now, again, if it's not looking better than this by the end of the year, you got to start thinking about some of the guys that are going to be in this coaching cycle, like a Ben Johnson out of Detroit. Like you can't. I don't know if you can let him hit the street and not have him in the building at some point. So
wait. So hold on. You're talking about Ben Johnson's coming in as what?
For head coaching candidate. Well, she was on, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, he was in our head coaching.
He declined it. He declined it.
That's what it was. Yeah.
He declined it. So I got another thing, Shontis. You made a great point today, and I didn't like when you said it, but I thought about it, and it makes a lot of sense. if this thing doesn't go right and we're tied to right the way I think Tepper is, because he ain't trying to spend no more money than he already got to pay. Rule, you trade Brian Burns for a first round pick. I didn't like when you said it. I really wanted to cuss you out, but it was too early in the morning and I hadn't had my coffee yet. And then after I had my coffee, I thought about what you said. And if we get to week 10, week 11, week 12, and we're sitting there and we don't look like we don't have a first round pick and we could actually be in the top 5 for drafting, you would trade Burns to get a first round pick.
Yeah, I mean, trading Burns for the first round pick, I just look at
I'm just saying.
Look at already fans are already being like, woe is us for getting rid of McCaffrey when all the while they were the ones screaming to get rid of McCaffrey in the first place. I'm just so tired. I'm so tired of just sending these guys away, hoping it gets us this reset we keep looking for. What did we get for McCaffrey? What did that get us?
It got back some of your draft capital. The issue is not that what it got back. You got back the right amount of capital. You just have the wrong GM making the pick.
So that's what I'm saying. So what would getting a first rounder?
I'm saying you got to fire everybody.
I mean, Shontis, I'm with you. I'm with you.
We've tried it again. We refuse to go on a full reset. We keep trying to keep certain guys around from other regimes. Like nobody from the previous regime that traded for Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield should still be in the building.
I would agree with that.
Like that's the issue.
Yeah.
But again, there were a group of people, and they're not to blame for this because they're not the ones making the decisions. But like there are people that still believe that Scott, we gotta give Scott time. Like no, you don't. You unfortunately where people lose jobs all the time because of somebody else. Yeah, he'll be another one. He'll be fine. Yeah.
But let me be clear, though. Let me be clear.
But you need to get everybody out of that building and start totally anew, because I just haven't liked anything those guys have done. Like in theory, the things they've done have been good, right? Like being active and this, that, and that, but you haven't done anything of substance that's netted you any return. So right now, I mean, we got the wrong guy making picks. We're having to trade away star players. So right now, we're just kind of stuck in limbo. Truthfully and honestly, bro, you gotta just rip the Band-Aid off and just go and just reset this thing from the top to bottom. You're gonna have to get rid of guys that are gonna be due for contracts that won't be worth the money that we're gonna pay them because we won't be any good.
Well, let me be clear. I don't want that to happen. I was just playing devil's advocate of what you texted. We should have signed Burns 3 weeks ago.
We should have.
This is crazy. But I thought about what you said. The only reason I brought that up is because what you were saying about the coaching staff. I doubt we cut ties with Reich this early. I would love to cut ties with Reich right now, but we're not going to do it. We're not going. I would like to see Thomas Brown actually get a chance to spin the ball.
I think that's what needs to happen instead of cutting ties with Reich so early on. I think he needs to let loose the reins a little bit and see what Thomas Brown can do. I think that while I say that. Also going both ways about it, like I also would maybe like to see that not happen, so then he's not so sought after as an offensive coordinator, or head coach, already on, because we know Avero's gone. For the issues that we have had, Avero has been able to scheme very well in certain aspects. He still has a problem with finishing games, but that can be, attributed to either health, stamina, being on the field as long as we have to be. Like there's different instances for that. But as far as the play calling, I mean, this week was the first time. Heck, it was the first time we took a shot downfield, to DJ Chark and made a beautiful move on it. We've pressed it in different regards, but then you still have the issue of what lost the Seahawks game, in my opinion, was having to net a field goal after that pick. You could have turned the game around had you gotten 7 points off of that pick. It was a great play by Deion Jones, who now has to be starting every week. You would imagine there's no way with Frankie Louva being out for however long, we don't know, with Shaq being out, Deion Jones has to have a roster spot. And then looking at Minnesota, I mean, like Minnesota, all these games have been, and at least for Seattle, or Seattle was, and the games going forward are continue to be, Minnesota's going to be a shootout. It absolutely is, and you're going to have to show that you can go along with that shootout with them. I mean, Justin Jefferson, he's going to look like Randy Moss, and this is going to be the real issue. Is that also now, that's what's scaring me about this Brian Burns contract, is that they're going to not do anything in free agency to try to, amend some of these issues, because we can't sign him because we have to figure out what we're doing with Brian Burns, and it's going to push everything behind to where you're not going to deal with any of these other problems because you're still having this giant looming weight over you of the money that he is very well due. But that's where, again, this Minnesota game comes all right, it's going to show, do we have actually a reason to play this season? or at this point, like y'all been saying, sit Bryce. I mean, you talked about it off chat about sitting Bryce the whole year.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things you have to truly consider. I mean, if the offensive line's not going to be any better to this point, if you're already done with a guy that got hurt because he was having to run. He got hurt having to try to make plays because there's nothing opening up down the field. And again, there's still things that he has to learn, because I think we did see in this game that there's still Bryce Young is still a little ways away, because there's things he's got to see and got to feel more as the starter that'll keep him out of harm's way. But I mean, you seriously have to consider, like, bro, like, maybe you just let Andy just take the shots for you this year, bro, and just in hopes that you can grab some more talent in the offseason. Possibly pick up some draft capital via trades, and hopefully build this thing up the right way the next time around.
Let me comment on that real quick, Shontis. You know, I thought about that whole Bryce Young sitting the rest of the year too. I think that's something that we should consider. I think playing behind that line, it is a liability for him and the longevity of his season. A bigger part to that, though, too, is from a perspective of coaching. I know Reich always says we're going to own our mistakes. Well, he needs to own the mistake that he's not calling a good game. He's not. I think you made a great point in the beginning of the segment, Jack, that, you know, you don't know what it is about the first quarter. I don't know what it is about the first drive. Our first drive has looked the same since preseason. Every team knows it. They plan for it, and we still run it. And we run it to no avail. There's always a three. I don't even think we've had a series this season where we started and we didn't go 3 and out the first series. I need to fact check that.
I think now I will say, because we didn't go out 3 and out the first drive this week. We went downfield, but then settled for a field goal. And we've done that.
So I didn't catch the first half. So
and we've done that multiple times. That's the aggravating part, right? Is that the first drive actually does sustain some life and has crossed the 50 multiple times. But then once they get, it's that, you know, the dead man, the no man's land of 45 to 25 that we can't get anything done, and end up having a kick, making Panera look like, you know, an all-pro kicker, to where we're, you know, expecting a 55-yarder from him, you know, to put us in a good spot. I think, though, what you're talking about, though, I mean, sitting Bryce. I like, for the future of the franchise, if he's your guy, yeah, I think that has to be something that's greatly considered. I mean, I was a proponent of letting Andy start the season, just knowing how aggressive this first 4 games was going to be. We talked about it, you know, Atlanta on the road, New Orleans on a Monday night, then you have Seattle, and then you have Minnesota, and then that's not even touching on Detroit and Seattle. Like, I was saying, like, yeah, maybe he should wait a little bit. Like, we don't have to do, especially once we got Andy. I'm like, all right, that has to be one of the reasons why you got him, not just as a backup just in case.
He's still a viable player.
He absolutely is. And I mean, he's done this everywhere he's gone. He has played a good half of the season for every, if not more, for every single team he's been on since Cincinnati. He did it in Dallas. He did it in Atlanta. He did it in New Orleans. Like, he's done it multiple times. And I think that it's something that you do need to consider. But the problem is, and again for Fitterer, if this season ends and Bryce Young played 20% of the year, and CJ Stroud continues to put up the box score numbers that he is, I'm not saying they're top tier plays, but like you said, the narrative is being created. And then you have to trade away Brian Burns just to get some sort of semblance of a future. I mean, that is it for Fitterer. I do not see a scenario in which he comes out alive.
Yeah, and I think too, you talked about the Bryce Young. You talked about the Bryce Young play, though. Another thing I noticed for him, it looks like I think they're telling him you got to go through your progressions before you run or before you make that executive decision. It looks like he's thinking too much back there to me. They have to let him play ball, period. If you drafted him for what he is, yes, you can protect him. Yes, you can teach him the methodics and the schemes behind it. But let the man play ball. Let him play the game that he knows how to play. Otherwise, you're going to continue to have this learning curve that, honestly and truthfully, Cam didn't have that learning curve because you let Cam play.
Yeah.
Right? Now, to the detriment, Cam never evolved from that play. But I think Bryce would evolve from that play, but you got to let the man spin the way he spins, period.
Well, I would argue they did try to bottleneck Cam toward that 3rd or 4th year. They tried to make him more of that pocket passer.
Oh, sure.
And that was where you saw some of his decline. But no, we talked about that last week, you know, that this issue of these rookie quarterbacks, these college quarterbacks that go and play at these big programs that they can just, it's backyard football, and then you try and make them play organized, like strategic football. He is holding onto the ball too long. He is, and the receivers he's throwing to are not. They are not getting out of their breaks fast enough for him to be able to read all his progressions. Like, he's reading one progression, hasn't even made the turn yet. He goes to the next progression, he's still waiting to turn around on the hitch. You go to the next progression, he's not even out past the defensive end yet. So, like, where in Alabama, he could throw it damn near blind, and it was going where it needed to go. So I agree with you. I think that, alongside of what we talked about the issue of potentially there being too many cooks in the kitchen, too many, many ladles in the pot that are stirring things up and causing these discrepancies, I think that is an issue. So he did seem to, I'm hoping he got a lot of, mental reps, obviously, with Seattle. And I think that, Minnesota's another one of them where, like, you don't need to play him. Like, you really don't need to play him against Minnesota. And maybe Miami, maybe-ish.
Oh, no, I'm not playing him against Miami either.
I'm not putting him in with him. Jack, stop.
Look at,
We're not doing that.
Look at, I mean, if you're gonna play him at some point, I'll see Detroit. I don't want to play him. I don't want to play him in any of these three. But
none of these games look like you want to play him. Honestly, if I just keep going down the schedule, I'm like,
after the bye week,
see us winning that one.
But do you want to really put him in that narrative of then having to? He hasn't played in a month, over a month. Then his first game back after a bye is up against the number 2 pick. Like, the narrative's already bad enough in that regard. So I'm not sure if I want him going in gunshot. Obviously it's the best game in terms of the matchup he's going up against. It'd be the easiest for him to be.
I don't think he'd be gunshot. I don't think he'd be gunshot. I think if anything, he would be. If you sit him up until after the bye week, I think he's going to be so rambunctious he won't be gunshot. As long as you let him loose and let him ball.
I think you would see what kind of mentality he has about him. We've seen him as this calm, cool, collected guy, but we've also seen him slip a little bit in these last few weeks in terms of his mentality. You've seen kind of the desperation, the aggression, the aggravation come through. So that would be my only concern, is what does that do to his mentality, keeping a guy. I mean, these players don't like not playing for any reason whatsoever, and especially if it is this one of, like, non-injuries, not a healthy scratch, but like, oh yeah, it looked bad and it looked like, so let's keep him off for a little while. I just wonder what that does for his mentality. But all right, wrapping up, keys for Minnesota before we head out of here. What do you think is going to be kind of the deciding factor for a win here, Shontis?
I think how fast you start out on the offensive end of the ball. Brian Flores is not the DC in Minnesota, has not done a great job with that group so far. So it'll be a situation much like last week where you're going to be playing against a defense that can be had. Can you establish the ground game? I think that's the best thing you can do for this offensive line. You saw how bad they struggle with pass protection. You saw how bad they struggle with just the mental areas in general with the false starts. You're back at home. Try to play to what your guys' strengths, and that's going to be grind. It's going to be grind and pound. So I'm going to need to see a lot of Chuba Hubbard. Going to need to see a lot of Miles Sanders. I think we need to see a lot more Laviska Shenault just on the field in general, to the point where it does create a chess match with the DC about how he has to go about calling his defense. Do you have to worry about the run? Do you have to worry about the play action pass? Do we have to worry about these drag routes over the middle with another guy that could possibly create separation? I think Carolina's gonna have to do a lot more of just making your guys comfortable. I think the ground game is the easiest way to get Zavala and Icky both going in the right direction.
Yeah. For me, it's firepower and consistency, right? To your point, Shontis, on all points, I agree. It's really coming out, punching them in the mouth, coming out with something different. Come out and go deep first. Come out and do a Laviska Shenault roundabout. Do something else other than what we've done. The run game has got to be integral in this piece. We got to try to shove it down their throat. And then defensive side of the ball, I'm going to say it again, don't give up that deep ball. Watch out for the double moves. Let's try to clamp them down, because Justin Jefferson will eat your lunch if you let him get hot early. That's going to be a serious problem, and they're going to have their work cut out for them. And of course, you already know at the tight end, it's going to be some issues going on there too. So it's going to be real interesting to see how this all plays out. That's what I'm looking for, is consistency, though, and firepower.
I mean, I think these scripts are starting to write themselves. This Minnesota offense is almost carbon copy of what you'd see in New Orleans. You've got a game-managing quarterback who can pick you apart when he has the time to do so. You've got multiple wide receivers in Jefferson, in KJ Osborne, and Addison too, that can easily make the presence known amongst these receivers, especially late in the game, and then your rushing attack as well. I mean, I guarantee you, this is going to be the week that everyone wished they had picked up Alexander Madison and played him on fantasy, because he's going to put up those he's going to get, I'll give him at least 2 or 3, and I think that you can see him putting up those numbers. And their defense still, it's going to be enough to get after him. I think it's going to show we should have tried whatever we could to get Danielle Hunter. We should have tried to do whatever we could to have gotten him, especially in this regard. I think that you could see a very, like I said, New Orleans-like game where now it'll be interesting to see if it's Andy Dalton playing instead of Bryce Young, if that makes things a little bit different. I think that both teams take a little bit while to get going, so I think it's going to be a very quiet first half, like that New Orleans game was. But it will be interesting to see how Andy's presence does or does not change things. I think that is a benefit of why he was running with the ones, for the 2 or 3 days that he was. Mm-hmm. But it'll be interesting to see how that has an effect. So I think for me, it's really just going to be about playing a full game. We have not played a full 4 quarters of football since the preseason, really. I mean, whether that's as a team. In this regime, I'm putting that behind me. All right, in this regime, and that not only from a team standpoint, but from a player standpoint too. Like whoever the guys that are either like, and if you're questionable, stay off the field. If you're we don't need you this game. If there's any game that we don't need you, anybody else, outside of maybe Xavier Woods, stay off the field, because that does nothing for you. Because clearly just that first half is not enough of a push to carry you through to win the game. You're not going to get enough points. So for guys like, for Frankie or for Mingo, don't risk further injury just to go in and put up 10 points in the first half. I don't want to see it. I don't. It doesn't need to happen. So I think that that's what we're looking for. Another game back at home. It'll be interesting to see what the crowd is like for a non-primetime, but still division, a division game. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes about. And there'll definitely be a lot of purple, I think. But of course, until then, got to keep waiting and keep pounding.